What if the deadliest attack on your life didn't come from your sworn enemy, but from the man who was supposed to be God's representative on earth? What if the very same people who smiled at you across the Easter dinner table were the ones sharpening their knives to plunge them into your throat during the most sacred moment of the Catholic calendar? On April 26, 1478, inside the most magnificent cathedral in Christendom, surrounded by 10,000 worshippers, the most powerful family in Florence learned the answer to that question in the most brutal way imaginable. One brother bled to death on the altar steps. The other brother, the target, escaped with his life by a fraction of a second. But here's the twist that history still whispers about. The assassination was meant to destroy the Medici dynasty forever. Instead, it handed Lorenzo de Medici absolute power over Florence, and unleashed a wave of vengeance so savage, so unthinkable, that it would forever stain the soul of the Renaissance. This isn't just a story about murder. It's about betrayal at the highest level. It's about a pope who sanctioned bloodshed inside a house of God. And it's about what happens when you try to kill a man, and he survives to tell the tale. This is the darker page. Chapter 1. The Golden Cage. Florence, 1478. The jewel of the Renaissance. A city of breathtaking beauty. A city where art, philosophy, and commerce had reached heights the world had never seen. A city ruled by one family, the Medici. Lorenzo de Medici, known to history as the Magnificent, was a poet, a patron of the arts, a statesman, and the de facto ruler of Florence. He was brilliant, he was cultured, he was loved by the people. But beneath the veneer of a benevolent ruler lay a ruthlessness that would make modern gangsters blush. Lorenzo understood one thing above all else: power is never given. It is taken, and it is kept through fear. But Lorenzo had a problem. Another family, older, prouder, and wealthier than the Medici. The Pazzi. They had been nobles for centuries. Long before the Medici were even a whisper in Florentine history. They had married into royalty. They had built palazzos that rivaled the Medici's own. The Pazzi were everything the Medici were not. They were pure-blood Florentine aristocracy to their very bones. And they resented the Medici's rise with a burning, consuming hatred that festered for decades. At the head of the Pazzi family was Jacopo de Pazzi, a banker, patriarch, a man who had watched his family's influence slowly crumble under the Medici's relentless expansion. Every appointment the Medici made, every law they passed, every alliance they forged, it was another nail in the coffin of Pazzi power. The two families circled each other like wolves in a cage. The Medici knew the Pazzi wanted their position. The Pazzi knew the Medici would never share power willingly. It was only a matter of time before someone made the first move. The question wasn't if war would come. The question was, who would strike first? Chapter 2. The Poisoned Messenger. Rome, 1471. A new pope ascends to the throne of St. Peter. Pope Sixtus IV, born Francesco della Rovere, came from nothing. Poor family from Liguria. He clawed his way to the top of the church through sheer ambition and a willingness to do whatever it took to advance his family's interests. Within months of his election, Sixtus transformed the papacy into a family business. He made his nephews cardinals. He gave them land, titles, and wealth. He elevated his family, the Della Rovere and Riario clans, to positions of unprecedented power. But one nephew stood above the rest, Girolamo Riario. He wasn't satisfied with being a mere lord. He wanted Florence. He wanted to replace the Medici as the rulers of the most powerful city in Italy. And there was the problem. Lorenzo de Medici had refused to bow to the Pope's demands. He had blocked the Pope's territorial ambitions. He had, most insultingly, refused to recognize the Pope's choice for Archbishop of Pisa. That man was Francesco Salviati, a bishop who had risen through the ranks of the church through flattery, gambling, and an unquenchable thirst for power. The Medici's refusal to accept him was a direct insult to the Pope himself. By 1478, the pieces were in place. The Pope wanted Lorenzo dead. The Pazzi wanted to rule Florence. Girolamo Riario wanted to be king. It was the perfect storm of greed, ambition, and holy hypocrisy. The plot was simple. Kill both Medici brothers during Easter, Massachusetts. A public assassination in the most sacred place in Florence. A spectacle of violence that would announce the new order and terrify anyone who dared oppose it. The conspirators believed that by murdering Lorenzo and Giuliano in front of 10,000 worshippers, they would shatter the Medici's power forever. They were wrong. They were very, very wrong. Chapter 3. The Sacrilege. April 26, 1478. Easter Sunday. Florence's cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, is packed with 10,000 souls. They have come to celebrate the resurrection of Christ. They have no idea they are about to witness a resurrection of a very different kind. Lorenzo and Giuliano de Medici take their places. They are surrounded by friends, allies, and loyal supporters. They feel safe. They are never safe. The conspirators are in position. Francesco de Pazzi, Bernardo Bandini Baroncelli, two priests, Stefano de Bagnon and Antonio Maffei, who have been hastily recruited to replace the mercenary who refused to commit murder inside a church. The Mass reaches its climax. The priest elevates the consecrated host. Heads bow. Knees bend. Silence falls over the cathedral. And then, chaos. Bernardo Bandini and Francesco de Pazzi surround Giuliano. They stab him once, twice, a dozen times. They stab with such frenzy that Francesco wounds himself in the leg. 19 stab wounds in total. One fatal blow to the head. Giuliano de Medici, young, beloved, a man with his whole life ahead of him, dies on the cathedral floor, surrounded by the faithful, in the house of God. Meanwhile, the two priests set upon Lorenzo, but they are amateurs. They hesitate. Their blades find his neck, but they do not strike deep enough. Lorenzo's loyal friend, Francesco Nori, throws himself in front of him. Taking the blow that was meant for Lorenzo, Nori dies on the spot, but his sacrifice buys Lorenzo precious seconds. Lorenzo staggers backward, clutching his wounded neck, and runs for his life. Behind the closed doors of the sacristy, Lorenzo de Medici, the magnificent, the ruler of Florence, is bleeding, terrified, and utterly alone. His brother is dead. His friends are dying. And outside those doors, a city is about to tear itself apart. Chapter 4. The Failed Revolution. While the brothers are being butchered in the cathedral, Archbishop Salviati and his men storm the Palazzo Vecchio. They plan to capture the Gonfaloniere, the highest official in the Florentine Republic, and declare a new government. But the Gonfaloniere, Cesare Petrucci, is no fool. He senses danger the moment Salviati enters his chambers. He refuses to cooperate. And when Salviati's men draw their weapons, Petrucci's guards draw theirs first. Salviati and his men are captured. The Archbishop of Pisa, a prince of the church, is thrown into a cell. Outside, Jacopo de Pazzi, the patriarch of the family, rides through the streets of Florence, his sword drawn, crying out to the people, "Liberty! Liberty!" But the people do not rise. They do not embrace the Pazzi as liberators. They have seen what the conspirators have done. They have watched a man be murdered in their cathedral. They have watched the Archbishop, a man of God, attempt to seize power through bloodshed. The people of Florence do not rally to the Pazzi. They rally to the Medici. The revolution has failed before it even began. Chapter 5. The reckoning. The conspirators' coup has collapsed. Now comes the reckoning. Archbishop Salviati, the man who conspired with the Pope himself, is hanged from the windows of the Palazzo Vecchio. He hangs there, a bishop in his sacred vestments, suspended from the seat of Florentine power, a sign to all who would dare challenge the Medici. Francesco de Pazzi, the man who helped butcher Giuliano, is dragged from his bed and through the streets of Florence. The mob beats him. They tear at his clothes. They howl for his blood. And then he, too, is hanged from the Palazzo Vecchio, hanging next to the rotting corpse of the man he conspired with. In a moment of grotesque desperation, the dying Archbishop Salviati sinks his teeth into Francesco de Pazzi's thigh, biting his co-conspirator even as he is being hanged. The bodies hang naked in the Tuscan sun, stripped of all dignity, all power, all hope. Jacopo de Pazzi is hunted down and executed. His body is thrown into the Arno River, a final insult to a family that once ruled Florence. In the days that follow, the bloodshed continues. 80 people are executed. Families are destroyed. Names are erased. The Pazzi family, once the pride of Florentine nobility, is annihilated. The Pazzi name is expunged from history. Every public symbol of the family is destroyed. Those who survive are banished from Florence. Lorenzo de Medici survived. His brother did not. And in the ashes of the conspiracy, Lorenzo built something far more terrifying than a republic, a principality. Chapter 6. The Triumph of the Magnificent. Lorenzo de Medici emerged from the sacristy a changed man. His brother was dead. His friends were dead. His enemies had tried to destroy everything he loved. But instead of being weakened, Lorenzo was strengthened. The people of Florence, horrified by the sacrilege committed in their cathedral, rallied behind him with a ferocity no one could have predicted. The failed assassination had given Lorenzo something he had never possessed before: absolute legitimacy. He was no longer just a Medici. He was the man who had survived the Pope's plot, the man who had been blessed by God to escape death. Within days, Lorenzo de Medici was being celebrated as a figure of divine favor. His survival was seen as a miracle, a sign that God himself had chosen him to rule Florence. In the years that followed, Lorenzo consolidated his power with an iron fist. He became the sole master of Florence. His word was law. His enemies were crushed. His allies were rewarded. The Pazzi conspiracy had been meant to destroy the Medici. Instead, it had made Lorenzo de Medici more powerful than ever before. The Magnificent had risen from the ashes of betrayal. But at what cost? The aftermath. The Pazzi conspiracy was a failure, but its legacy lived on. The Pope, enraged by the execution of his archbishop, declared war on Florence. The conflict lasted 2 years. Florence was nearly ruined, but Lorenzo survived. He always survived. The conspirators believed that violence could solve their problems. They believed that murder could bring them power. They were wrong. Lorenzo de Medici taught the world a terrifying lesson that day: that the line between victim and victor is thinner than a blade, that survival is its own kind of victory, and that the dead are quickly forgotten. The Pazzi family wanted to write their name in the history books. Instead, they were erased from them, and that, in the end, is the darkest truth of all. History doesn't remember the righteous. It remembers the survivors. What would you do to survive? What would you become?